Lesson 21 I, Buddha Marcellin Zirignon, Part 1, I, Marcellin Zirignon, an ordinary practitioner of the Lotus Sutra who attained Buddhahood in 1993 after 6 months of intense Buddhist practice and who is currently acting as a provisional Bodhisattva. Lesson 1 in the first part of this lesson, which is in fact an autobiographical work, it will be a question of ruining, succinctly, the film of my life. In the second part, my life will be collated with the words and writings of the Lotus Sutra so that my quality of Bodhisattva on earth and became Buddha Marcellin Zirignon emerges and asserts itself. This sub-lesson 1 of my work will be presented in 2 parts, from my birth to conversion to Buddhism, my encounter with Orthodox Buddhism, from my birth to conversion to Buddhism, from my birth in Ome until my encounter with Orthodox Buddhism. My life has been punctuated by many adventures, too many adventures even. From my birth to the end of my studies, born in the center west of Côte d'Ivoire, health problems led me to listen to my university course. My birth, I, Marcellin Zirignon, was born on April 29, 1970 at the Ome Maternity Hospital. The city of Ome is the capital of the eponymous department in the Go region, cheese tree in the national language Bede, of a Bede father, originally from Uruguayo, from the village of Kaibati, Canton Batiest. Uruguayo is a sub-prefecture of the aforementioned region whose capital is Ganyoa. My mother, for her part, is of the Goro ethnic group, originally from the department of Ome, from the village of Delgfla. I am the 10th child of a family of 17 children founded by polygamy. What can I say about my childhood, my adolescence? Not much, except that I did not know the childhood or the golden princely adolescence of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Like my brothers and sisters, I went to school, I had 3 meals a day, received care when I was sick, I was properly dressed. My father, manager of a supermarket of the Avion chain, formerly SCOA, did his best to ensure the well-being of his numerous offspring. So I was not born with a golden spoon in my mouth. My school and university curriculum. Before making observations on this curriculum, it must first be explained. Explanation of said curriculum from 1976 to 1982, SEP, Primary and Elementary School Certificate, plus entry into 6th grade obtained at the Catholic Primary School for Girls in Ome, Ome Girls. From 1982 to 1986, BAPC, First Cycle End of Studies Certificate, obtained at Chig, General Education College of Ome. From 1986 to 1989, Baccalaureate A2, Philosophy and Letters, obtained at the Modern High School of Man. From 1989 to 1994, Doig 2 in Law, not validated at the University of Cocody, now Felix Houphouët University. Observations at the end of a reading, even quickly, of my curriculum. 2 observations are necessary. From 1976 to 1989, we note a flawless course. In 1994, in Doig 2, second year of license, I was ejected from university without a diploma. This deserves explanations. A successful school curriculum, without fault my primary school years. From my first year of primary school, CP1, until 1976, until the last year, CM2 class, I did not repeat a single class. At school, I was always among the best in my class. While the rule, at the time, was that the entrance exam in 6th grade was only passed after several attempts, I passed on the first attempt. I was very young, I was only 13 years old. At the time, it was an early age. Middle school and high school years oriented to the Chig of Ome. My first 2 years, 6th and 5th grades, were quite average. The last 2 years, 4th and 5th grade, were years of progression. The progression was such that had it not been for mathematics, where I was rubbish, I would have been the top of my class. This is because I was among the top 5 in my first year with a very low average in mathematics. Logically, in the second cycle at the Modern High School of Man, when the coefficient of mathematics went from 4 to 2 or even 1, I was top of my class. I was a fairly brilliant pupil, so studious that I was selected to represent my high school in the Gaines and Herb Cerebral competition in 1988. My performance was so brilliant that I think that if things had been a little transparent, maybe my high school and I would have won the right to represent Côte d'Ivoire internationally. A university course broken by illness after obtaining the Bac 2, Philosophy and Literature, with the ambition of becoming a lawyer, I enrolled in the law faculty. At the university, another ambition was added to the first, to become an academic, after obtaining a doctorate in political science, then another in economics. He who wants to go far takes care of his mount. I internalized this maxim. Indeed, I had already chosen my thesis topics. Regarding political science, I cherished the wish to be a specialist in the Middle East and the Arab world. I had started to gather documentation. I also set about learning Arabic. This pro-Arab trapism was not the result of spontaneous generation. It was the result of the double standard policy applied by the international community, particularly by the West in this part of the world. This policy that reached its peak during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990. The student that I was, not understanding this misunderstanding in international relations. This incongruity born from the Israeli occupation of Palestine in complete violation of Resolution 181 of November 29, 1947 of the UN General Assembly, and the diplomatic, military, financial means implemented to drive Iraq out of Kuwait. I wanted to understand. For me, only the defense of a thesis on this region could quench this cognitive thirst. The economies of Southeast Asia fascinated me. I was burning with the desire to understand the strategy put in place by the countries of Southeast Asia called dragons or tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, which at the beginning of the 60s were at the same level of development as many African countries to emerge as newly industrialized countries, while their African counterparts are vegetating in the meanders of underdevelopment. Understanding this passage from obscurity to light of these countries could not be done without defending a thesis on the history and dynamics of the economies of these countries. On this subject, I had also started to gather documentation. I obtained the Doigai, the penultimate year of the degree, without a hitch. It was in Doig 2 that things started to go wrong. I was seized by violent headaches, for 4 years, from May 1991 to early 1995, which forced me to interrupt my studies, without ever validating the penultimate year of my degree. When I say interrupt, I mean that although sick, I took the exams, not having studied. It was as if an external force was pushing me to fail. My encounter with Orthodox Buddhism Banosaku Bodhi, or our desires lead to enlightenment, the sufferings of birth and death lead to nirvana. This essential principle of Buddhism, relative to my situation, found a fertile ground for its blossoming. The reasons for my conversion to Buddhism at the beginning of May 1991, violent headaches took hold of me. Which I found surprising since I was not familiar with long nights of work, called AL operations in university jargon, nor subscribed to alcohol, narcotics and cigarettes. Suffering terribly and wanting to honor my schooling, a guarantee of achieving my objectives, I turned to so-called modern medicine. After a month of treatment with medical examinations and a few psychotherapy sessions, nothing worked. Exhausted, I resorted to the medicine of our ancestors or traditional medicine. Some of my fellow students practicing the Lotus Sutra and members of the Sakagaki, Buddhism had at that time many followers in the student environment at that time, noting my disarray, advised me to try the method of the Lotus Sutra. Wanting to continue my studies at all costs, not knowing how to do, I decided to try the aforementioned method, only to be cured of my illness. I did my first Gongyo on July 31, 1992. Whose representations of Buddhism were in agreement with those of non-Orientals. The perception of Buddhism in the non-Oriental imagination in the popular extra-Oriental imagination, Buddhism is an Asian religion of static meditation, singer of miserableism backed by austerities, and fundamentally represented by Tibetan Tantrism of which the Dalai Lama is the emblematic leader. This representation of Buddhism, until my conversion to the Dharma of the Buddha, I had appropriated it. Buddhist practice should be a therapy for my illness, and nothing else. Becoming a Buddha was not in my intentions. The attainment of this state of life in my understanding was only the prerogative of Asians. Moreover, I did not even know what a Buddha was. My attainment of enlightenment after half a year of intense Buddhist practice, I attained Buddhahood. The Buddha, whom I became, perceived the meaning of his mission on earth. After 6 months of intense Buddhist practice, Buddhahood came from my first Gongyo. On July 31, 1991, I never again let go of the Lotus Sutra. Like the defender in football, facing the attacker of the opposing team, I never stopped marking him. Like the distant Buddha of the Juryo chapter 16th of the Lotus Sutra, I never neglected to invest myself body and soul in the practice of the Lotus Sutra. Driven by the will to heal my illness to achieve my ambitions, I could spend hours and hours reciting Daimoku 10,12, 14,16 hours in a row. In return for these bodhisattvic practices, I could have 1 hour, sometimes 2 or even 3 hours of non-cephalic suffering to study. Later I understood that it was a ploy, a bait from the Buddhist deities to maintain me and lead me to persevere in Buddhist practice. I joined, of course, a group of Soka Gakkai practitioners on campus. This allowed me to internalize the method of Homo Bodhisattvas, conversion to the Soka Gakkai, faith, practice, study. Although I was not looking for it at all, I achieved enlightenment on January 31, 1993, after 6 months of intense recitation of Daimoku and Gongyo coupled with 2 years of enormous cephalic suffering. I was not yet 23 years old. This attainment of Buddhahood is proof that the Dasonic formula, inspired by the lotus parable of the old man and his poor and distant son, which states that if you recite Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and do not seek enlightenment you will still achieve Buddhahood, is not a vain formula. On January 31, 1993, during one of my intense practices, I saw myself, like an image projected before my eyes, guiding a group of practitioners of the Lotus Sutra during a Gongyo session. With awakening, the beginning of entering into communion with the universe, the wisdom inherent in Buddhahood gradually allowed me to understand certain things. I understood that these extreme headaches had been inflicted on me by the Buddhist deities and why they should continue. My headaches were so intense and terrible that I often found myself crying, once night fell, in my bed. I had the impression that a sharp object, a knife for example, was wandering around in my head. Sometimes my eyesight was failing. However, I had not lost the meaning of things, I had kept all my lucidity. I never lamented. My tears were not audible, especially since the model of education I received is one where man does not cry, he rather dries his tears, guided my behavior. So I remained stoic in the face of pain. As proof, I had not put an end to my political activities within the FP started in the underground in 1990, and especially within the FESI, of which I led the law section for 2 years from 1993 to 1994. On the understanding of the meaning of my mission on Earth. At the dawn of the year 1995, my headaches disappeared as they had come, that is to say suddenly. However, they were replaced by physical pains, as if I suffered from osteopathy. I tolerated them much better than the headaches at their beginning. From my awakening, I understood that I was not suffering, but that I was rather in the grip of a martyrdom linked to my mission as a Bodhisattva emerging from the earth, appearing in the era of Mappo to propagate the 5 characters of Myo, and that the sufferings to which I was prey were the work of the Buddhist divinities. In the first quarter of 1994, I was ejected from the education system without a diploma or qualification. I could resume my studies. I then became a Cornelian hero, torn between the passion of my doctoral ambitions and the desire of Kosen Rufu. Without hesitation, I chose to propagate Buddhist law, in this troubled era of Mappo. Another choice that would have been perjury, would have meant for humanity the impossibility of breaking the gear of samsara and reaching the summit of Mount Sumeru. Resuming my studies would have condemned humanity to a certain Bujjhaya death born of this denial of Buddhahood. Not wanting to perjure myself and respect the vow of servitude of propagation of Buddhist law, in the apocalyptic era of Mappo, which I formulated at the sacred peak of the Eagle, in chapter 22 of the chapter of the Lotus Sutra. On my temporary withdrawal from the Soka Gakkai, the end of my cephalic passion coincided with my withdrawal from the discussion group that I had joined at the beginning of my Buddhist practice. I will always be grateful to the Soka Gakkai in general and to President Ikeda in particular for not only introducing me to Buddhism, but also for contributing to the foundation of my Buddhist intellectual architecture.